You ever get that feeling, like something is watching you? Not the kind of paranoia that fades when you turn on the lights. I mean the deep, ancient kind. The kind that crawls up your spine and settles there. The kind that makes your body understand something that your brain refuses to accept. I felt that tonight. Birmingham, England. One of the oldest industrial cities in the world. A place built on iron and coal, and the backs of men who never got their names in history books. Most people know Birmingham for its canals, its food, its football. But underneath all of that, underneath the streets and the traffic and the noise, there is something else entirely. I have been exploring abandoned places for 6 years. Tunnels, factories, hospitals, asylums. I have been in places that most people would never voluntarily enter, and I thought I had seen everything this world had to offer in the dark. I was wrong. Tonight I am heading to an abandoned Victorian railway tunnel on the outskirts of Birmingham city centre. This tunnel was constructed in the late 1830s and early 1840s as part of the expanding railway network that was transforming England during the Industrial Revolution. According to local records, several workers died during its construction. Accidents, cave-ins, gas pockets, the kind of deaths that got one line in a ledger and were forgotten within a week. The tunnel was eventually decommissioned and sealed off from public access. It has sat there for decades, empty, dark, forgotten by everyone except the people who live nearby and whisper about it at night. I have been receiving messages for months about this tunnel. People telling me not to go. People telling me they walked past the entrance late at night and heard things, voices, footsteps, crying. One woman told me she saw a light moving inside the tunnel when no one was supposed to be in there. She said she watched it for 10 minutes before it simply went out. She never walked past that entrance again. I probably should have listened to them. I am pulling up to the location now. It is almost midnight. I chose this time deliberately because I wanted the area completely quiet. No foot traffic, no ambient noise. Just me, my camera, and whatever has been waiting in that tunnel for the last 180 years, the industrial area around. The tunnel is exactly what you would expect. Abandoned, derelict, the kind of neighborhood where things were built to last forever and then simply left to rot. There are old brick buildings on either side of me, windows long since smashed. Graffiti covering every available surface. But here is the thing about graffiti. It stops about 50 feet from the tunnel entrance. Like whoever was spraying these walls just decided not to get any closer. I am going to let that sink in for a second. Taggers go everywhere. Abandoned buildings, railway bridges, highway overpasses. They do not scare easily, but not one of them tagged the walls near this tunnel entrance. Make of that what you will. I can see the entrance from here. A massive Victorian brick arch, maybe 20 feet high, framed by iron gates that have been pushed open by someone at some point. The brickwork is incredible actually. These Victorians built things to outlast civilization and they were not wrong. The arch looks as solid today as it probably did in 1840. There is fog tonight. Real fog, the kind that rolls in off the canals and settles low to the ground. And I swear to you, it is heavier near the tunnel entrance than anywhere else. Like the tunnel is breathing it out. Like it is exhaling centuries of cold dark air into the night. Okay, I am going in. First thing that hits you is the cold. Not just the cold of the night air. Something colder than that. The kind of cold that comes from deep underground where the sun has never reached. The temperature drops maybe 10 degrees the second I step inside and it keeps dropping as I move forward. Second thing is the smell. Damp stone, old iron, standing water, something organic and ancient underneath all of it. Like breathing in the 19th century. Like the air in here has been recycled so many times it has absorbed the past. Third thing is the silence. And I mean real silence. Not the quiet of a Sunday morning or an empty building. The silence in here is active. It presses against your ears. It has weight to it. The only sounds are my footsteps on the old stone ground, and the slow methodical drip of water somewhere ahead of me. My flashlight is cutting a beam through the darkness and what I can see of the tunnel walls is extraordinary. The original Victorian brickwork is largely intact. These massive arches overhead, the walls closing in on both sides but not too tightly, maybe 15 feet across. The railway tracks are still here on the ground, rusted solid into the stone, going nowhere now. There are puddles of black water that have been sitting here so long they look like oil. I'm maybe 200 feet in and I can still see the entrance behind me. That little circle of slightly lighter darkness. That connection to the outside world. I keep checking it. I do not know why exactly, but I keep looking back at it. The walls in here tell a story if you know how to read them. You can see where repairs were made at different points over the decades. Different colored bricks patching holes in the original work. Water damage that has been going on so long the stone has changed shape around it. Old wooden support beams that have partially collapsed. The wood black and soft with age and moisture. and the graffiti down here is different from outside, older. Some of it scratched directly into the Victorian mortar, rather than sprayed on. Names and dates going back decades. People have been coming down here for a long time. Most of them probably left with good stories. Some of them probably left with something more than that. Wait, hold on. I need to stop for a second because my flashlight just did something. It flickered, and I know what you are thinking. It is just a loose battery connection. It is nothing. But it was not flickering before I came in here. I checked everything before I came in. Fresh batteries. Brand new bulb. This equipment does not flicker. It is steady again now. But I want you to note that, because it is going to happen again, and when it does you are going to remember I mentioned it here first. The tunnel makes a bend up ahead. I cannot see what is around it. The acoustics in here are strange. Every sound I make comes back to me slightly delayed, slightly wrong, like the tunnel is running a second or two behind me. My footsteps echo before I take the next step. My breathing sounds like it is coming from someone standing slightly to my left. Before I go around that bend, I want to tell you about something I found on the way in. There is a section of wall about 100 feet back where someone scratched something into the original brickwork. Not modern graffiti. This was done with a tool. Deliberately, with effort. And what they wrote was this. They watch from below. I do not know who wrote that or when. But it was not recent. The edges of the letters are worn smooth. This inscription is old. Very old. And whoever made it had a reason. I am going around the bend now. Oh wow, the tunnel opens up slightly here. There is a wider section that must have been some kind of maintenance area or signal box location back when this was operational. The ceiling is higher here. The walls pull back a bit, and the fog in here is thicker than anywhere else in the tunnel. It sits on the ground maybe knee-high, and it moves when I walk through it, swirling around my legs. There is so much water damage in this section. Long black streaks running down the walls from the ceiling. Puddles that cover almost the entire floor here. Shallow but everywhere, turning this section into a kind of shallow reflecting pool. And when I shine my flashlight at these puddles, I can see the ceiling reflected in them, and it is beautiful in a horrible way. These ancient arches reflected in this dark water that has been sitting here for God knows how long. I am going to stop and listen for a second. Do you hear that? I know you cannot hear it as well as I can, but there is something, just at the edge of perception. A sound that is not quite a drip and not quite a breath and not quite words. It is coming from. I cannot tell. The acoustics in here scatter everything. It could be in front of me. It could be behind me. It could be coming through the walls from somewhere else entirely. I am going to keep moving. There is something on the ground here that I almost stepped over. I am going to crouch down and get a close look at this. It is a shoe. A child's shoe. Old. Victorian era old. Based on the style. Black leather. Button fastening at the side. The sole completely separated from the upper and curling away. It has been here for a very long time. There is no reason for this to be here. None. The nearest residential area was never this close to the tunnel. Children were not playing in here. So how did this shoe get 150 feet inside a Victorian railway tunnel? I am going to leave it exactly where it is. I do not know why, but I feel very strongly that I should leave it exactly where it is. The wider section of tunnel ends ahead and it narrows back to the original dimensions. There is a side tunnel here as well, branching off to the right. It is smaller than the main tunnel. Much smaller. Maybe 4 feet high and 3 feet wide. Maintenance access, probably. It is completely dark inside and I can feel a cold draft coming from it that is noticeably colder than the already cold air in the main tunnel. And from inside that side tunnel, from somewhere inside that small dark passage, there is a sound. I need you to understand that I am a rational person. I have alternative explanations for almost everything I have encountered tonight. Acoustics, dripping water, settling stone. Old buildings make sounds. Abandoned structures have strange airflows. I know all of this, but the sound coming from inside the side tunnel, it is crying. It is the sound of a child crying, soft and distant and completely consistent, not the occasional sound of wind through a vent, not the irregular dripping of water. This is crying. This is the specific unmistakable sound of a small child in distress. I am shining my flashlight into the side tunnel. The beam goes about 4 feet and then there is just darkness, but at the very edge of where my light reaches, just at that boundary between illuminated and dark, there are 2 points of light, small, yellowish, reflecting my flashlight back at me. Eyes. Something in that side tunnel is looking back at me. I am backing away from the side tunnel now. I am putting several feet between myself and that opening. Whatever is in there, it is not coming out while I am watching it. The crying has stopped. It stopped the moment I moved the flashlight to where those reflected eyes were. And now there is nothing from that side tunnel but silence and that persistent cold draft. I am going to keep moving forward in the main tunnel. Right behind me. I thought I heard footsteps right behind me. I turned around immediately and there is no one there. The tunnel behind me is empty, but I heard them. I absolutely heard them. 2 slow, deliberate footsteps on the stone floor, maybe 6 feet behind me. The kind of sound that your body identifies before your brain catches up. The sound of another person walking. There is no one behind me. I am checking my camera footage right now. The last 30 seconds of recording. I am scrubbing through it on the screen here, and I can tell you that in the footage from my camera there is something visible. In the background. Behind me. A shape. It is not clear. The resolution of the footage in this darkness, even with the night mode engaged, is not great. But there is a shape back there, taller than me, standing still, and then it is not there in the next frame. I do not know what to do with that information, so I am going to keep walking. The tunnel is shifting in character again as I go deeper. The graffiti has thinned out back here. Fewer people come this far in. The brickwork is more damaged, more original, more Victorian. There is a section where the wall has partially collapsed inward and I can see through the gap into a void beyond the main tunnel wall. I am going to shine my light in there. It is a room, a small sealed chamber, maintenance room, probably, given the rusted equipment I can see inside, workbench, collapsed chair, tools, and there is something on the wall in there, something that looks like a photograph. I am going to reach through this gap and get it. Okay, I have it. It is a photograph, old photographic paper, the kind used in the Victorian era. The image is of a group of men. Workers, based on their clothing, work trousers, heavy shirts, suspenders, flat caps. They are standing in what appears to be a tunnel. This tunnel, I think, based on the brickwork visible behind them. There are 10 men in the photograph. They are not smiling because Victorian photographs required long exposures and smiling was impractical. Their faces are serious and tired and direct. 9 of their faces are visible. 1 face has been scratched out, obliterated. Someone took something sharp to this photograph and completely destroyed the features of one of the workers. The scratching is so thorough that even the outline of a head is barely visible there. Just avoid where a face should be. I am turning it over. On the back, in old ink that has faded to brown, someone has written, Grand Junction Tunnel Workers, 1842. Never forget what happened to Thomas. The man with the scratched out face is Thomas. It has to be. Someone removed his face from this photograph. Someone who knew what happened to him in this tunnel. And the only reason you scratch out a face in a photograph from 1842 is because you want that person gone, erased, as if destroying the likeness could somehow destroy what that person became. I am going to tell you something, and I need you to take it seriously. Before I came here tonight, I did some research into this tunnel's history. There are very few records from the construction period. That is not unusual for the 1840s. Record keeping for manual laborers was minimal at best. But I did find a single reference in the Birmingham archives to an incident during the Grand Junction Tunnel construction in 1842, a brief entry in a city engineer's report noting that work in a particular section had to be abandoned after what was described as a serious incident involving a worker named only as T. Hargrove. No further details. The section of tunnel in question was sealed off rather than repaired, and the construction route was ADJUSTEDT Hargrove. Thomas Hargrove. Whatever happened to Thomas Hargrove in this tunnel in 1842 was serious enough to seal off an entire section rather than continue working there. Serious enough that someone later scratched his face from the worker's photograph. Serious enough that 180 years later his name is apparently still known to whatever is down here in the dark. I need to keep moving. The deeper I go, the more the tunnel seems to respond to me. I know how that sounds, I know, but there is no other way to describe it. The sounds change when I stop moving. The cold air shifts direction when I turn. Once, just once, I smelled something that was completely wrong for this environment. Brief, a few seconds only, and then gone. It smelled like coal smoke and in washed bodies and the specific chemical smell of old lantern oil. The smell of 1842, as if the past was pressing through into the present for just a moment. There is something ahead. I need you to stay with me here because what I am seeing does not make sense and I want to describe it as accurately as I can. There is a light ahead of me, not my flashlight, a different light, bluish white rather than the yellow white of my flashlight. It is not a point source like a lamp or a phone screen. It is more diffused than that, like it is emanating from an object rather than projecting from a device. And it is not still. It is pulsing very slightly, very slowly, like a heartbeat, if you want to get poetic about it, which I am trying not to. The light is low to the ground, about child height, maybe 60 or 70 feet ahead of me. And there is a sound with it, faint. I have to strain to hear it over my own breathing and the ambient drips and creaks of the tunnel. But it is there. It is a voice, a young voice, singing. Not clearly enough for me to make out words, but unmistakably singing. A melody that is almost recognizable, almost like something you would know, but not quite. Wrong in some way that I cannot articulate. I am moving toward it, I know. I know exactly what every rational person watching this is thinking right now. Do not go toward the light. Do not go toward the singing. Every horror movie ever made has taught us this, and I am going toward it anyway because I need to know, because that is why I am here, because whatever is down here deserves to be documented and shown to the world. I am at about 40 feet now. The light is coming from a figure, a small figure, sitting against the left wall of the tunnel, sitting with its back partly turned toward me. The white dress it is wearing catches the light in a way that the tunnel walls do not. The glow seems to be coming from the figure itself rather than from any external source. It is a girl. She looks like a child, 8, maybe 9 years old. She is sitting with her knees drawn up, her arms wrapped around them. The dress she is wearing is Victorian. White cotton, black ribbon details at the collar and cuffs, the kind of dress you see in photographs from the 19th century. Her hair is long and dark and hanging forward around her face. She is not moving. The singing has stopped. I do not know if she can see me. I do not know if she knows I am here. I do not know what she is, and I am very aware that I am using the word what rather than who. I am going to speak to her. She turned. She heard me and she turned, and I need to tell you what I am looking at right now, because I have been doing this for -1 years and I have never said these words before, and I mean them completely. I am looking at something that should not exist. Her face is wrong, not disfigured, not damaged. Wrong. The proportions are correct, but the texture is wrong. The color is wrong. She is pale in a way that is not pallor. She is pale in a way that suggests a complete absence of blood beneath the skin. And her eyes are closed. They are closed and then they open and they are white. Not white like the whites of normal eyes. Completely white. Iris, pupil, everything, white. Like looking into the small moon set in that pale face. And she is smiling. And then she opens her mouth. I am running and I am not ashamed of it, and I am not stopping, and the sound that came out of that thing's mouth was not a child's voice. It was the same sound the walls made earlier. That moan. That deep structural moan that vibrates in your chest. And it is filling the tunnel behind me, and I do not know if she is following me because I am not looking back. I fell. I went down hard on the railway tracks. My knee is bleeding. My palm is scraped up. The camera went down and skidded, and I grabbed it and kept going. I am up. I am running again. The moan stopped. I am slowing down, not stopping but slowing, catching my breath, listening. Silence. The tunnel behind me is silent. The fog is still there swirling around my legs. The dripping water, the distant nothing, no singing, no moan, no footsteps. I am not going back. I am going to tell you something right now. Standing in this tunnel, my knee bleeding, my hands shaking, my heart doing things that a heart should not do for extended periods. I am not a superstitious person. I was not raised religious. I have always believed in rational explanations. I believe in physics and chemistry and neuroscience and the remarkable ability of a stressed human brain to generate experiences that feel completely real but are not. I believed all of that on the way in. I believe significantly less of it right now. What I saw back there, what I heard, what I felt the entire time I have been in this tunnel, the photograph, the footprints, the name Thomas scratched into the ceiling 100 times. None of it belongs to the rational world that I thought I lived in, and I am aware that I have been down here in the dark for what feels like a very long time, and stress and fear and darkness do things to human perception. I know all of that. I also know what I saw. I am moving toward the entrance now. I can see it far ahead of me. That small circle of slightly less dark, the outside world. The fact that it is midnight and cold and I am alone in an industrial wasteland does not matter right now because it is not this tunnel, and that is enough. My name. Something just called my name. From behind me, from deep in the tunnel, in a child's voice, my actual name. The name that I introduced myself with at the beginning of this video. The name that I have never spoken inside this tunnel tonight. It knows my name. I do not know how that is possible. I do not know what it means. I know that it called my name once, and then twice, and the second time it was closer. The sound of it was wrong in the same way that the girl's smile was wrong. Correct on the surface, deeply incorrect underneath. I am at the entrance. I am outside. I am outside, and the night air has never felt so good in my entire life, and I am putting my hands on the cold brick of the exterior wall of this tunnel, and it is real and it is solid and it is part of the world. I understand. I am not going back in. Let me catch my breath. Let me just stand here for a second and not be inside that tunnel. Okay, I need to review this footage. I need to look at what my camera really captured in there because my camera sees things differently than my eyes do. Better. Sometimes, it captures the full frame rather than the narrow focus of frightened human attention. I am going through it now. At the point where I heard the footsteps behind me, the footage is showing a shape. I mentioned this earlier, but looking at it now with the footage paused, it is clearer than I thought in the moment. It is a figure, tall, standing about 15 feet behind me, and it is looking at me. I can tell by the angle of the darker area where the head would be. It is facing directly at me, and it is not the shadow figure I encountered later. The proportions are different. This is something else entirely. When my flashlight flickered, in the strobe effect of the flickering footage, there are frames where additional figures are visible. Not one, multiple, standing against the walls, watching. Every time the light goes out there they are, and when it comes back they are gone, standing in the dark and disappearing into the light, as if the darkness is where they live. And this right here, this is the one that is going to stay with me. When I fell on the railway tracks and the camera hit the ground and skidded, the camera was pointing back down the tunnel, pointing at the ground, pointing at the old railway tracks. And in the footage from that angle, from ground level, there are boots visible, Victorian work boots, standing right next to where I landed, right beside me, the boots and the lower legs of someone in Victorian work trousers, standing right there while I was on the ground. Not the girl, not the shadow figure, a worker, a male figure in work clothing from the 1840s, standing over me while I was on the ground, while I was completely vulnerable. It did not touch me, whatever it was. It stood there and it did not touch me, and I do not know if that was mercy or something else entirely. I am looking back at the tunnel entrance now, from where I am sitting, maybe 100 feet back across the open ground. The tunnel entrance is a dark rectangle in the night, still, quiet, and for just a moment, there is a light inside it, moving slowly, the way a lantern moves when someone carries it, the light of something that uses a lantern, because in 1842, that was how you worked underground, and some things do not change even after everything else does. The light goes out. I am going to tell you what I think happened in this tunnel in 1842. This is speculation. I want to be clear about that, but it is informed speculation based on everything I found in here tonight. Thomas Hargrove was a tunnel worker, one of the men in that photograph. Something happened to him in a specific section of this tunnel during construction. Something bad enough that they sealed off that section rather than continue working there. Something bad enough that a colleague or a family member later scratched his face from the worker's photograph. Whether that was to erase a monster or to protect a memory or to prevent something from being able to use a likeness, I do not know. What I do know is that Thomas Hargrove never left this tunnel. Not in any meaningful sense. Whatever he was in life, whatever he became in death, he is still here. He has been here for 180 years in the dark and the cold and the silence. And he is not alone. The girl in the white dress, the shadow figure, the multiple shapes my camera captured against the walls. This tunnel is not haunted in the way that word usually gets used. It is not that one spirit lingers and occasionally manifests. This tunnel is dense with something, accumulated, almost, like grief and death and darkness concentrated in one place over nearly 2 centuries until the place itself became something else. Until the tunnel became more than a tunnel. I have explored a lot of places. I have been in genuinely dangerous situations. I have never, before tonight, been in a place that felt inhabited in this way, not visited by spirits or haunted in the traditional sense. Inhabited, like the darkness here is alive and the things in it are as permanent as the Victorian brickwork. I want to talk about the ceiling before I go because I did not get to stay long enough to fully process what I saw there. In the deepest section of the tunnel that I reached before I encountered the girl, I shone my flashlight straight up at the ceiling and carved into the mortar between the Victorian bricks, up there where no one would easily see it unless they were looking. The name Thomas had been carved over and over and over, not in one handwriting, in multiple hands, different sizes and depths and styles. Many different people, over many years, had climbed or reached up and carved that name into the ceiling of this tunnel. Why? What compels that? What made person after person enter this tunnel across 180 years and feel the need to put that name above their heads? I think it was a warning. I think it was the oldest form of warning. Leave the name of the thing so the next person knows what they are dealing with. Thomas. Thomas is here. Thomas has been here. Do not forget Thomas. I did not forget Thomas. I do not think I ever will. It is almost 2 in the morning now. I am sitting in my car in the parking area near the tunnel entrance with all the doors locked and the heater running and the tunnel still visible in my rearview mirror. I have not been able to bring myself to drive away yet. I keep watching the entrance in the mirror, waiting for something. I do not know what. Some sign that it is finished for tonight. That whatever was activated by my presence in there has settled back down into its 180 years of dark patience. The entrance is still. The fog has thinned slightly as the temperature drops further. The old Victorian brickwork is just brickwork again from out here, just stone and mortar and architecture. But I know what is inside it now. I am going to go home. I am going to upload this footage and the photographs, and I am going to try to find out more about Thomas Hargrove, about what happened in that section of tunnel in 1842, about the girl in the white dress and who she might have been and how she came to spend eternity in a cold Victorian tunnel underground, about the worker who stood over me when I fell and chose not to harm me, because I think that matters. I think the choice not to harm me means something. Whether Thomas Hargrove was a monster or a victim or something in between, whether whatever he became after 1840 to retain anything of the man who showed up every day with those 9 other workers and got his photograph taken in a tunnel he was building with his own hands, something in there chose not to hurt me when it had every opportunity. Maybe that is the story, not the fear, though the fear was real, not the horror, though it was genuinely horrible. The story is that something in that tunnel has been in the dark for 180 years and it chose, at least for tonight, at least with me, to let the living leave. I am leaving now. If you are in Birmingham, if you know this tunnel, if you have been inside it or near it, or if you have stories about it that you have never told anyone, I want to hear from you, because what I experienced tonight did not come from nothing. There is history here that has not been fully uncovered. There are names in that ceiling that belong to real people who lived and worked and died in that tunnel, and they deserve to have their stories told. Even Thomas, especially Thomas, drive safe. Stay out of tunnels after midnight, and if something calls your name from the dark, do not answer it. I drove home that night with every light in the car on, the radio on full volume, anything to fill the silence, because the silence in that tunnel had gotten inside me somehow, and sitting in the quiet of the car it came back immediately. That weighted pressing silence, that active silence that has texture and intention. I kept the radio on all the way home, and when I got inside I turned on every light in the apartment and I sat at my desk and I did not sleep. I watched the footage instead, all of it, from the first frame to the last, 3 times through. And each time I watched it I found something new, something that my eye had missed in the previous viewing, because the human brain, remarkably good at protecting itself from things it does not want to process. The first time through I caught the obvious things. The shape behind me, the girl, the boots beside me when I fell. The second time through I caught the smaller things. The moments between moments that you only see when you are specifically looking for them. At the 11-minute mark of the footage, I was examining the graffiti wall. I was narrating to the camera, explaining what I was seeing, running my finger along the older scratched inscriptions, and in the background of the frame, maybe 30 feet behind me, visible for exactly 2 frames before the camera angle shifts, there is a figure standing in the middle of the tunnel, not against the wall, in the center, standing on the railway tracks, tall, male proportions, wearing what appears to be a flat cap and heavy work clothing, 2 frames, maybe a 15th of a second, and then it is gone, and I am still narrating to the camera about 19th century graffiti, completely unaware that something was standing 30 feet behind me watching me the entire time. At the 23-minute mark, the section where I was examining the child's shoe, I crouched down to film the shoe on the ground, and as I did the camera angle dropped in for about 4 seconds. It was pointing at a low angle down the tunnel, and at the far end of the frame, barely visible at the edge of the light, there is something on the ground, not standing, on the ground, low, moving, the way something moves when it is crawling. Slow and deliberate, and wrong in the way that crawling adults are always wrong, because adults do not crawl unless something has happened to them that prevents them from walking. It was moving toward me, whatever it was. It was moving toward me across the tunnel floor while I was crouched down looking at a child's shoe and completely unaware of it. And then I stood up and the camera angle changed and I walked away from that spot and it was gone. I did not see it. I had no idea. I watched that section 12 times. At the 31-minute mark, just before I entered the wider chamber section, my camera auto-adjusted its exposure for a moment as I turned and pointed it at a slightly brighter section of wall, and in that brief moment of different exposure, the tunnel behind me lit up slightly differently, and you can see that the fog on the ground is not evenly distributed. It is not lying flat the way fog does. In several places along the tunnel behind me the fog is disturbed, displaced upward in small columns. The way fog is displaced when something is standing in it, walking through it, multiple points of disturbance, spread across the width of the tunnel, moving in the same direction I was moving. I was being followed by multiple things, and the fog was the only evidence of it, and I only found that evidence when I went back and looked at footage taken with a slightly different exposure setting for a fraction of a second. I have not been back to the tunnel since that night. That was 6 weeks ago now. I want to be honest with you about what these 6 weeks have been like, because I think it is part of the story and I think you deserve to know it. The first week was the worst. I was not sleeping well. When I did sleep, the dreams were not nightmares exactly. They were more like memories. Being in the tunnel, walking through it. But in the dreams I can see what was around me that I could not see in real life. The figures against the walls, the crawling thing on the ground, the tall man in the flat cap walking alongside me step for step the entire time I was in there. The dream version of the tunnel is populated in a way that the real version only appears to be once you go back and look at the footage. The thing that bothered me most was the singing. In the dreams, the girl singing is clear enough to make out words, and the words are wrong. The melody is from a real Victorian nursery rhyme, one that children sang in the 1840s, but the words have been changed, substituted, and what the words say, in the dream, is about the tunnel, about what happened there, about Thomas, about what Thomas did and what was done to Thomas and why no one ever put his name on a proper grave marker. I cannot tell you the words. I do not know if I should. I do not know if repeating them does something. I know that sounds irrational. Most of what I know from the last 6 weeks sounds irrational, but I have learned to be careful about what I put back out into the world from whatever I brought back from that tunnel, because I did bring something back. I think I need to talk about that. It started 3 days after the visit. Small things at first, the kind of things you dismiss individually and only start to worry about when they accumulate. A cold spot in my bedroom that was not there before, always in the same corner, never moving, just cold. 10 degrees colder than the rest of the room, in a room with no drafts and no exterior walls in that corner. My cat would not go near that corner. She had slept in that corner every night for 3 years before this. After the tunnel visit, she would sit at the edge of the room and stare at that corner for extended periods. Not the playful focused stare of a cat watching a bug, something else. Still and very attentive in a way that communicated awareness of something I could not perceive. The sounds started in the second week. Not dramatic sounds. Not the kind of thing that would be obviously paranormal if you heard it once. More like the sounds of a building settling, except my building is concrete and steel construction from the 1980s, and it does not settle that way. A slow rhythmic knocking from inside the walls. Always exactly 7 knocks, stopping, starting again after several minutes. Always 7. In the tunnel, before I encountered the girl, something knocked on the ceiling of the tunnel from above, exactly 7 times. I noted it in the footage. I noted it in the script I recorded afterward. 7 knocks, stopping. Then in my apartment, 2 days later, 7 knocks. From inside the walls, I called my landlord. He sent a maintenance person. Nothing was found. The maintenance person looked at me in a way that made me grateful I had not mentioned the tunnel. He attributed it to pipes, old pipes in the building settling after a temperature change. He left. The knocking continued that night. 7 times, stopping, starting. I started researching Thomas Hargrove in the second week. Not because I thought it would make anything stop. I am not sure I believe it works that way, but because whatever was in that tunnel had been in there for 180 years and it deserved to have someone try to understand what happened to it. Even if the only person doing the research was a guy sitting alone in a well-lit apartment avoiding the cold corner of his bedroom at 3 in the morning. Thomas Hargrove is surprisingly difficult to find. The name itself is common enough in Victorian England that searching the records produces dozens of results. I found birth records, marriage records, death records for multiple Thomas Hargroves across the Midlands in the relevant period, most of them unrelated. But I found something in the Birmingham City Archives that I want to tell you about. In 1840, the city engineer's office maintained a construction log for the Grand Junction Tunnel project. Most of this log is routine. Materials ordered, labor allocated, progress reports, weather delays, standard Victorian administrative documentation. But on the 14th of March 1840, there is an entry that stands out. It is written in a different hand from the rest of the log, as if a different person made this entry, and it is brief to the point of being almost useless. It reads, "Incident in Section 7 involving T. Hargrove. Section 7 closed indefinitely per instruction of Senior Engineer Aldworth. Workers reassigned. Do not revisit. Do not revisit." Those 3 words at the end of a Victorian construction log entry.